Guys gonna be ready?
In just a couple minutes here.
Okay, let me know.
All right, thanks.
We
You
can-
mentioned business tax effect and driving business out. What's happening with Dine and with, whatchamacallit in Manchester?
They're laying
Oracle?
off a few people.
Why?
now Because they're just they're getting rid of Dine marketing. They don't
Is it
need
moving somewhere else?
No. Well, eventually, yeah. They're going to leave the place that they do, and according to the paper said this morning.
I didn't have a chance to read that article
No,
either.
I didn't
so-
either.
Yeah, they don't give you any real detail as how long it's going to take, but it said in their one sentence said that they're trying to extend their lease arrangement.
So the problem is a decline in business, not an unfavorable environment in New Hampshire.
Right.
Okay.
Yes. Also, the other part of the problem is funding Planned Parenthood. There are other things in there that
In the budget, you mean?
in the budget. Yeah.
Okay.
There's several things that they're worried about, and they want to make sure that the governor doesn't give on those either.
He said he's not.
Oh, that'd be wonderful.
2 weeks ago, he said he was going to veto
Yeah.
it.
'Cause when he's
Even
on
before they
executive
took the increases out, he said he was going to veto it.
But I wonder if taking those increases out changes. But you're saying he said today they're still gonna veto it even with those
According
changes.
to his representative at that meeting,
Okay.
Well, they still were they rolling back the business tax breaks that we had in this budget?
That was
Okay.
one of the things that they're going to fight because it screws up everybody. Because all the company they've already paid half the year, and they're going to have to go back and increase the
And
pay.
they were trying to do it retroactively.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Isn't that unconstitutional?
Well, I think so.
Yeah.
I don't think the Democrats mind pesky
So-
little hurdles like constitutionality.
No.
So there are a number of other things in there. So it's really a mess, according to what the people said today.
All right, so I did have a copy of the 7 bills that the governor vetoed. One is the zero emissions vehicle. I think that's a good one to talk about. The idea that they were going to give the commissioner again, what department should that be? If the commissioner thought
Should
that-
be labor.
Department of Labor, if the commissioner thought that business was not paying the correct wages or employment compensation, they could shut the business down. The commissioner could shut the business down.
Nice.
I think, so alternative treatment centers, they passed a bill allowing them to become for-profit centers, and the governor didn't want to do that because he thought it'd be bringing in a lot of out-of-state
Yeah.
people taking over our local businesses. I don't know if you think that's worth talking about. The other one was they were doubling the fees, the administrative fees that municipalities could charge when collecting motor vehicle registration, and the governor vetoed that as well. So it's not a lot, it's going from 5 to 10,
It's
but it's still doubling.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Still doubling.
So we could just
Yeah.
talk about it doubling.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right.
You want-
Okay.
right?
That sounds good.
Okay.
Glad you're a little bit more prepared there. But
Yeah. I think Kevin's prepared. Carl, you leading this off, or do you want me to?
you are. I'll let you do that.
All right. Dick, so I'm going to lead this one off.
Okay.
And
You
we'll-
want to be on camera too when we open?
Okay.
Okay. You all set?
Just give me 10 seconds here. Think about which show we're doing. And okay, I think we're all set, Dick.
Okay. In 10, 9, 8, 7.
Hello and welcome to People's View. My name is David Schoeneman. I'll be hosting the program today. On People's View, as you know, if you've tuned in the past, we have a panel of former legislators on tap here to talk about what's happening up in Concord. I'd like to welcome my co-panelists. Again, I'm David Schoeneman.
I'm Carl Seidel.
Kevin Scully?
And Don LeBrun.
Thanks, guys, for coming in. Well, we're the last week in June, heading into the summer. Folks are going on vacation. but things are still happening in Concord. And a lot of things that are happening in Concord, people at home really ought to know about. And the big news today is that the governor is getting his veto pen going, as we fully expected.
Got the red one out.
We've got the Democrat-controlled House, Democrat-controlled Senate, and they are going to great lengths, really, it seems to me, to dare the governor to pass or to veto some of this legislation. And he's sticking to his guns, which I think is great, and he's vetoing some legislation that is really be very onerous for the folks at home in terms of raising taxes and fees, imposing too much government control, a lot of things that are going on that people really need to know about. So let's start with what you got there, Kevin. Take a look and
Okay, well,
let's go over some of these.
I did print out some of the bills that the governor vetoed. I think he had vetoed a total of 7 in this session, so the red pen was flowing.
Good.
And I think the first one we had was he vetoed a bill that was going to allow the municipalities to double the amount of money they were charging to register cars locally. So I have to tell you, I'm very much with him on this one. I think the rationale that they were giving was they were going to use it for transportation work, but I think, as you know, Carl and Don, we'd given millions of dollars back to Nashua and across the entire state of New Hampshire for these very purposes. There's no reason for us to allow the localities to charge even more money to our already cash-strapped citizens when we were taking care of the situation.
And it's
ourselves.
something we didn't pass a couple of years ago when somebody put that in. So it's not something new. They're just trying again. I mean, the overall program is bring more money in, according to them, that because we need it for all these things. Whereas what we did with the excess money so far, we've been paying one-time fees to a number of people to handle some of these things, like the problem with the gas tax.
It is pretty amazing, isn't it? I think so many of these tax and spend bills were defeated in the last session. I think they just put them in the drawer.
That's all they
They're
did.
They
waiting
saw
to
the
bring it
election
back.
results, they said, woo-hoo, we're going to start taking some money.
But how much of a bill like that has to do with their attempt to remove the toll from exit 10 for the premium outlet malls? That's what that's all about.
Well, I don't know. Well, I mean, but if that's true, why are they doubling the cost down here? You know, in terms of the municipality of Nashua taking that money in. How
That's
does
what
that-
we go to. We go to Nashua. What I think is interesting here too is that of the 2 ways to increase revenues, one is favored by Republicans, and that is to stimulate growth, to bring in more revenue. The other, favored by Democrats, is to take more from the folks who are already here. And that's what this does. This would do nothing to stimulate growth. In fact, it would probably destimulate growth. We know that registration fees on vehicles, that escalates if you have a new car. It's lower if you've got an old vehicle. It's lower if you don't have so many vehicles. So here's an opportunity that the towns would have to double their administrative fee. And at some point, someone's going to say, you know what, I'm tired of this. And it's not going to have an effect to accelerate or grow the economy. It's going to have an effect to squash it down.
The other thing is, too, that some of these things that we're going to be talking about have to do with control and power. It gives them ways of controlling whatever the aspect is of the law that they're looking for. And I think New Hampshireites are looking for more choice, and they're not giving it to us.
That's a
What
very good
message
point.
are you sending by saying you want to decrease or increase, in this case, potential revenue, but yet on the other hand you want to decrease revenue by probably the same amount of money?
Yeah.
So, what sense does it make?
I don't know. I think it's a way they want to do their thing, rather than they feel that we haven't been fair as Republicans. We haven't been fair to the people. But I don't know. I think it's just the reverse.
We removed the toll from exit 12
Right.
without increasing anything else.
Right.
Now, one of the things that the governor is afraid of is some of this stuff that we're going to be talking about is increasing fees or taxes or whatever, and the income tax that some of the legislation is going to to allow them to do eventually. They're forcing us into that income tax
That's what they're trying to do.
because
Yeah.
they're expanding how much money we need by making promises of, increasing certain things. And whereas what we were doing was taking excess money that we were getting that wasn't budgeted and paying off one-time types of costs.
So what else has been vetoed? I think it's I'm very glad the governor did this. He's on the side of the folks, and that's why he's so popular. He's on the side of the folks.
I agree. I think this was in another, example of fiscal sanity. The governor has vetoed a bill that was going to force the state to have all of our vehicles be zero-emission vehicles by 2039. Now, even the concept of zero emissions is a total misnomer,
Right.
because there is no such thing as a zero emissions vehicle. If you're driving an electric car, there are emissions. All you're doing is you're shifting the point of the emission from the car itself to the power plant where the electricity is
The
generated.
provider.
Yeah, so there is no such thing as a zero emissions vehicle.
That's
so this
absolutely
is
correct.
feel-good legislation to make it look like we're, again, fighting
Virtue
this.
signaling, they call this.
And it was going to cost us $28 million. Wow. That's like $20 for every single man, woman, and child in the entire state of New Hampshire for, again, what I consider to be feel-good nonsense. So the governor has once again stepped up and said, no, we're not going to do this. We're going to let the people of New Hampshire keep that money in their pockets. We're doing just fine. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I think that we have to let people make their own decisions on how they're going to spend their money anyway. And folks can choose to buy an electric vehicle if that makes economic sense. Clearly it doesn't today, but if the day comes when it does, they can make that decision. Or if you want to buy an old car, an old truck like I have.
It's
You
not
can do
only
that
just
too.
the people, it's the companies that we want to keep here or entice to come here. That's the biggest, I guess one of the biggest handicaps is the cost of power of electricity.
No, I thought that the electrician put the socket in the wall and voila, electricity appeared.
And it's
Isn't that the way it
totally-
works?
It's totally
free.
clean.
That's right.
There isn't any smokestack.
And it's free. So.
Yeah.
Oh, it's just crazy. Well, one of my little pet peeves too was this whole thing about, and it just goes to show the illogic of some people, and it had to do with those tax credits they were giving people to buy those electric cars. So they were getting a $7,500 tax credit for buying an electric car. If you look at who was buying those cars, almost every single person had a salary, income of more than $100,000 a year. Most of them was over $200,000 a year. So the people who were always screaming about the rich, getting away with murder, were willingly and purposely giving tax breaks, total tax credits to the rich folks so that they could buy their virtue signaling electric cars. And I'm hoping that is being phased out now, thank goodness. I think we're getting back to the point it's like, God bless you, if you want an electric car,
Go get one.
go get one.
It's all yours.
Don't ask us to pay for it.
Right. And
That's
that's the
right.
thing, because it isn't just a tax credits, like everything else, are not free.
Right.
That money has to come from somewhere.
That's-
And it comes from the rest of us. And it's just not good business. It's certainly not fair, but it's not good business to take money out of folks' pockets to give to these other people to go and buy that electric car.
Yep. The governor vetoed a Senate bill that had to do with basically youth employment again. Once again, they're stepping in saying, we know better than the businesses. We know better than the families. We know better than the teenagers trying to make an extra buck. And we're going to limit the number of hours that those kids can work. And so, again, a private contract. And let's face it, if they're teenagers, the parents are involved. They know what's happening here.
Right.
But it may be good for the family to get that extra income. They may be trying to save for a car. The state is now stepping in saying, we're going to make sure that nobody abuses these children. And Mr. Businessman, we're going to punish you if we catch you hiring a kid who wants to make a couple extra bucks. And they said that the way the bill was written, if somebody, a state enforcement official, would walk in off the street and see a kid working there in the quote-unquote non-approved hours, that would be considered prima facie evidence of violation, and they could immediately ding the businesses. You're guilty, without even having any kind of due process and punish them for that.
Again,
Yeah.
that's putting power into the bureaucrats that they shouldn't have. Back in 2011 and 12, when we did have a majority, the Republicans had the majority, we looked into some of the rules and regulations. And there were two main divisions of our bureaucracy that had the power to just enforce penalties and stuff. And they were enhancing their budget by doing that. They didn't give any warning, and that's why we had to look through, and we entered a law where you had to give a warning first time, and then you can start fining them. But allow them to correct some of the things that you saw wrong in their operation before you slap them with a $10,000 fine or something like that.
Right.
That's very, very important because there are, again, two aspects to this bill, and I think the governor vetoed it for both reasons. One was that it's going to really limit what an employer might want to do with a teenage employee, and that's not good for anybody. It might be easier for the employer to just say, forget it, we're not going to hire any teenagers, it's just too onerous. And secondly, it eliminates due process. If that bureaucrat can come in and immediately issue a fine, that's not fair to anybody. So for two good reasons.
Why
this
try to
bill
fix
vetoed.
something that doesn't need fixing?
Well, there you go.
There's nothing wrong with the student program as it stands as far as hours worked and whatnot. That has to be in place. You can't have a student working till 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock at night, and then expecting to go to school and be productive in school.
Right.
Well, I'm thinking a good motto for our current Democrat Party is, if it ain't broke, we'll meddle till it is.
Well, that seems to be their.
right.
And speaking of
Intention.
meddling, there was another one, I think, of bureaucratic overreach, and it was Senate Bill 151. And this had to do, and again, I think the governor himself said it was well-intentioned. This had to do with making sure that businesses were paying wages and workers' compensation coverage. Everybody wants the workers to be paid. Everybody wants the workers' compensation monies, the funds to be funded, so we have that, God forbid something happens to somebody. But this bill was going to allow the Commissioner of the Department of Labor to, again, if they felt a business was not paying what they should be paying, this bill would allow that commissioner to shut the business down.
That's too much overreach.
Wow. You want to talk, and
Yeah.
when you talk about the idea of unintended consequences, it doesn't take too much thinking to say, okay, if you shut this business down, who else does it affect?
Right.
In terms of people maybe they're doing business with, and
Sure.
the jobs of those people that are on there. And again, this was
Chain reaction.
Yeah, this power they want to give to an unelected bureaucrat.
Word spreads too through entrepreneurial communities, and if someone is dinged without due process, they're going to let their friends know, and someone else is going to say, I don't want that to happen to me. I'll go to Texas, or I'll go somewhere else. I'm not going to go to New Hampshire if this is what happens.
Or
The
a
business
prospective employer coming here that gets word
Absolutely.
of it.
That's right.
Yeah.
We compete with other states, and we
Sure.
have to create an environment that is attractive, not that is onerous and punishing.
Well, talking about that part of the budget, then we ought to get to the business taxes.
All right, let's talk about that.
Because that, I think, is one of the major things that people are looking at. They want to just not only stop cutting the business taxes we have planned for 2021, but to start right now and change the tax rate for this year. It's 6 months into the year, and these 90% of the companies that are in New Hampshire have already paid half their taxes for the year because they pay it quarterly. And now they're going to try to get it back. I think, first of all, it might be unconstitutional,
Yeah.
but I don't think that's fair at all. That generally, whenever you go into something like that, you start it going into the first of the following year that the law is implemented.
Yeah. You can't
So,
pass a retroactive law.
Yeah,
That's
well,
bait and switch.
that
Yeah.
they're doing that right now because that's the way HB1 and HB2 listed. And first of all, I think right now it's shown for, what is it, 3 years now, that this lowering of the business tax, even by fractions of a percent, has been very successful. We've had a lot of surplus money coming in, and we're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars, not just 50 or 100,000 or whatever. And that has been used for very good reasons. Paving the roads that we haven't been getting enough money in for, or education that has been. These are one-time payments, though. But now what they're looking at is continuing commitments, where every year you're going to have this and probably asking for more. And yet the projection, we talk about education. We all want to fund education and do it properly, but we have a decreasing amount of children going in over the next 10 years.
Yes.
And you think we're going to have, right now we're committing to increasing the, rather than looking at it and funding it appropriately as needed.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, I was looking at the budget, and it did seem, in the face of a decreasing student population, they were increasing the taxes for education by 11%. 11% over 1 2-year period when the
Right.
the inflation rate is less
Yeah,
than
but
2?
that wasn't going to the students, though.
Well,
I mean, come on, let's face it, that's going to the administration.
Yeah, it's not really going to education. That's the unfortunate thing, too. As an alderman, Don, we saw this. We saw it
Right.
with Nashua, with the declining enrollment year after year after year. We saw the budgets continuing to go up
Yeah.
and up and up. And
Declining enrollment, but the cost per student went up.
right. And not just the cost per student, but the overall budget went up.
Yeah.
So the budget went up, which means that the cost per student goes up even faster. I think the best way to fund education is the way the charter schools are funded, where the funding is set at whatever your student population is. It's X numbers of dollars per student.
Yes.
And so if your enrollment goes up or down, your overall budget goes up or down, and the entity has to compensate for that. They have to figure out how to make that work. It's doable. Just people can do it, solving problems. But the regular public school system is not able to do that. But it's not really, it's not for education. It's a jobs program. And
That's
so
right.
to preserve the jobs program, we continue to increase the budget in the face of declining enrollment. And it sounds like the same thing on the state
What do you
level.
got, 4 different unions within the school system, isn't it?
Well, there's the
You
teachers.
got the teachers, the secretaries, the administrators,
Yeah. And there's principal union now, too. If
a
that's,
principal union, yeah.
Yeah.
So there's
So-
4.
Yeah. There's
crazy.
custodians and all the rest of that, too. So
That's right. That
Not
makes
only
right.
do we see this at the state level, we see it right here in Nashua.
that's right.
Oh, yeah.
The schools again got more of a percentage increase than any other group in the
Right.
city, and I thought that the mayor tried to get it, but he didn't. Wasn't able to convince all his aldermen, and they overrode him.
Well, there's a strong desire to spend at City Hall right now, in our City Hall.
Well,
And
you
it's
touched on
unfortunate.
something that I thought was really, really important and I do feel like sometimes that regulators or legislators have tunnel vision when it comes to businesses, thinking they can treat the local businesses any way they want and that those businesses have no regress, that they can't just
Right.
say, you know something, I'm done here,
Right.
and just pack up and move away.
Right.
And I wonder if indirectly they were acknowledging that themselves, because what I noticed is in the 2-year budget that was approved, the business revenues go down in the second year. And I'm wondering if they're looking at this saying, okay, well, we know that if we start squeezing that golden goose too
Yeah.
tight, there's going to be an adverse reaction, and we'll get our money that first year, we're going to get less in the second year. And again, the way to do this is not to squeeze more money out of a small and decreasing size group. It's to encourage growth
Right.
and new businesses, so you can take less from an ever-expanding group, and you still have more dollars coming in, which is what you were talking about,
Right.
in terms of having those revenue excesses.
Right.
And I haven't looked at the budget very closely like some of the people are, but if you believe some of the things that have appeared in the paper and appeared elsewhere in the digital world, they just haven't really balanced the budget probably. They claim that there's like $100 million shortfall or something like that. just by balancing the income and the outgo that they've done with the laws as they want to have the budget read. So
this
I
is-
think you have to do something about that.
Yeah, I think this is going to be interesting because we believe and hope that the governor is going to veto that budget. The budget's untenable, unsustainable. So then the question becomes, what happens then?
Right.
And will the Democrats be willing to keep government running at its current functioning level by agreeing to a continuing resolution? Or will they resort to brinksmanship and shut the whole thing down and then try to blame
That's
the
what,
Republicans?
That's right. I think that's where it is, and my understanding is that a continuing resolution for funding at one quarter of the current year's budget. So you just have 3 months to finish up, and then we don't have any. They can't spend any more money unless we get together and extend the continuing resolution.
Well, it's going to be interesting to see what happens because the portions of the budget that the governor disagrees with, that I think we all disagree with, are truly untenable. And if you can't somehow decide that is now tenable, it's not going to work. So someone's going to have to back down a little bit, and I hope that common sense reigns and that Democrats realize that the governor's budget and the way it was been done in the past, the budget that we have works, and that we can't tear it apart and expect good results.
Well, there are lots of things in there that have to be done differently, and I'm just wondering how it's going to work out myself. But it was a one-sided. My understanding of what was happening up there, it was a one-sided agreement. Okay, we'll take these things away that you don't like, and we'll keep what we want. Because some of the stuff that is still in there, as the business taxes, they didn't give you any choice. They didn't change it because the governor, my understanding, said he would have taken a different approach. Like he would have let the tax remain as implemented this year and not have the increase in 2020 or the decrease in 2021. So there was, I think, a significant thing that he gave up because it was already law, but they didn't accept that. They wanted to cut it off as of the end of 2018, which again, as you said, might not be legal, but that's what they were going to do.
It's bait and switch. You
The
can't tell someone.
consequences of over-regulating business is twofold.
Right.
You'll either force them out of business or you'll force them to move. It's that simple.
And we've had a couple companies that are moving out
Yes.
of here because, again, it goes back to the utility costs, too.
The triple whammy, right? Utility costs, taxes, and then labor costs.
Right.
Yeah.
Which they're trying to drive up as well. It's like they're going out of their way to really destroy the New Hampshire advantage and have us go back into a recession when we're I think we're doing better than anybody in New England right now, aren't we?
We are.
Too,
In terms
and
of
we've
growth.
worked very
We are.
hard to regain that, to start getting some momentum here, and I think we have good momentum. We certainly don't want to lose it.
And the budget, too, was going after some of the things that everybody wanted, improving mental health support, improving ability to handle people who have those problems, to handle certain other just health organization things. It was doing things that we wanted done, but doing it at a reasonable rate, and something that we weren't increasing the. I shouldn't say we weren't increasing the income because we were increasing the income, but not the individual costs of the income, the money that was coming in. Are we doing it by raising the water, I guess, for every
Well, that's
every
the way to
vote?
do it. Yeah, we don't want to have an income tax. I think that's still in the budget.
Right.
We don't want a
wanna
sales
have,
tax.
The loss of the business tax advantages that we've been gaining. So hopefully Governor Sununu is going to stick with it.
The problem with the mental health situation you were talking about, if you remember, when we were rookies,
Yeah.
we had a 10-year plan.
Right.
You know what we have now?
What?
A 10-year plan.
But it's a 10-year
We've
plan
tread
that was
water
even worse
for the
than-
last 10 years.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I know they haven't done anything, but we were addressing that with what the governor's budget did, and there was a number of other things in there that it handled, but it handled by increased money coming from the business tax, even though the rate of the tax was decreasing,
Right.
and it's only fractional
Yeah.
a bit, and we weren't doing it too fast. We weren't going in there and saying, you know, a whole 10% cut. No, we're doing fractions of 1%,
Yeah.
and it still gave us a severe increase in income.
We appropriated money for a new ward at the hospital for mental patients. It sat idle for a year because we couldn't staff it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's another thing, that we're doing it at a rate that the people can use it properly. You don't just throw money at a problem. And you look at it and evaluate what you're doing with that money is doing, or it's working. It's working as you intended it to work,
Right.
not that you're wasting any
That's
of
the
it.
key. The money has to work for you.
That's right. That's right.
That's right.
Well, you never make it in D.C. I mean, if you don't want to throw money at problems.
That seems to be the solution all too often, but it just doesn't work.
You
as
mean like
say, Carl.
the interstate highway in Hawaii?
You can't fund the growth too fast. When is the governor likely to see the budget? Just real quick here in our last few seconds.
Well, it's going to happen tomorrow, I think, because they voted on it today, and it's going to be handed to them. Well, I think tomorrow. They don't want to waste it. They
Right,
have
the
to do-
fiscal year ends, doesn't it, on June?
Well, that's one thing that confused me, because what I read in the papers, for some reason, it's extended to July 8th or 6th. No,
Something like
Well, we'll
that.
see
I
what
don't know how
happens.
they did that.
A 10-day extension or something
Usually
like
it
that.
is the end of the year, yeah.
Yeah,
June
end of
30th.
June.
So the budget has come out of the House and the Senate.
Oh,
and
yeah.
It's
Yes.
going to the governor.
Oh, yeah.
And the
Right.
last word we have is the governor's likely to veto it.
Right.
So folks at home have to stay tuned with that. Folks, we are out of time here in the studio. Thank you, everyone, for coming in. And thank you, too, folks at home, for tuning in. You're watching People's View, where we're discussing what's going on up in Concord that affects you and your budget every day. Thank you very much. We'll see you next time.